All right, Stephanie, Monday Night Raw has shifted away from SummerSlam towards the Bash in Berlin, and Randy Orton made his case for winning the championship. He talked about it being 20 years ago that he first won the world title, and now he is aiming to do it again and become a 15-time champion. Gunther came out there, just pure Gunther in his body language, the compliments to Orton before promising to, wreck him. And of course, the segment ended unnaturally, but it's pro wrestling, so naturally with Drew McIntyre running out and CM Punk brawling. But how do you feel now after a couple weeks here of Randy Orton as a first major challenger here for Gunther in Berlin?
I think Randy Orton's a pretty good choice. I think it's pretty hard to think of anyone right now going up against Gunther having a chance at winning. So I think it's more who Gunther can tell the best stories with and keep getting his character over best with. And I really liked what he did tonight. I thought it was really good. It was giving me almost like he made me think of Punk in the straight edge society. That kind of, really like looking down on someone and kind of,
Yep.
being like really condescending and like morally higher than them. And I just really liked it. And it was such an interesting way to go with Randy, because I think a lot of us, like Randy's been around for such a long time. And a lot of us have kind of followed his journey. So a lot of what Gunther was saying, like rang true, about his history and where he's been and where he is now. So I really enjoyed it, and I'm excited for this match. And the only bit where I kind of felt a little bit like, oh, was when Randy did the whole I'm an American thing. But at least he was doing it as a baby face in America, unlike MJF, who then has to tell the crowd to stop cheering for him. So he can have a pass on that.
Yeah, I'm curious how the crowd reacts in Berlin, because they're WWE fans. They've loved Randy from afar, in many cases for decades, or just in recent years. Gunther is, arrogant. But I assume they're going to be cheering for. I don't know. What do you expect?
I think that another reason maybe they've put Randy in this position is because he can take the hit if the crowd are really pro Gunther, because he is, such a legend. Randy got a tremendous reception in France when they sang his song and everything. And I think there will be quite a few members of the crowd that in Berlin that are willing to do that too. But I think once the bell rings, they'll be really behind Gunther, because even though Gunther is not German, he's Austrian, but we're pretending he's German for this event. For them,
Yeah,
it's going to be, it's going to be a once in a lifetime thing to see. He might not be German, but he did spend a lot of time on that scene, and it would be a once in a lifetime thing for them to see like one of their own in this big position. So I think the crowd will be firmly behind Gunther.
Yeah. One thing I really like about Gunther is like, hey, everybody, this is Randy Orton. He's great. Take a picture. And you're like, oh, he's giving credit to Randy. And then he goes, but he could have been so much more, and he just like knows exactly where to strike Randy. Goes after his grandfather, his dad, says Randy could have been so much more. What do you think of Randy's comeback to that, which was, I do things my way. I haven't been perfect. I got 5 kids and then a smoking hot wife, or whatever he said about his wife. And, it's nice to compliment your wife. Doesn't always have to be about looks, but it's not a bad thing either to be a husband saying nice things about your wife back home, taking care of the kids. And he said, I think I did pretty well for myself. Was that a good comeback for Orton in your view, to Gunther saying you screwed up, you could have been more if you hadn't gone, been immature and made mistakes, especially in the first decade of his run?
I think it was a good comeback in that Randy has had a really great career, and he has also seemed to have really grown as a person. You can't knock Randy's accomplishments, but at the same time, could he have maybe been more? Yeah, there's a possibility that if he had maybe been a little more mature during the early days of his career. So he is correct that he's done all these great things. great for him having 5 kids and the hot wife. But I think then adding that in, I like basically being like, yeah, okay, I made mistakes, but look, I've got money, I've had all these championships, I've got a hot wife. It almost kind of proves some of Gunther's point a little bit, because Gunther in his way, in his like very like serious hard work ethic, like stoic way, he's kind of looking down on Randy as probably being like a bit materialistic, a bit thinking of the wrong things, and Randy being like, yeah, well, I have a hot wife and living the American dream. Like, that's not going to impress Gunther. Like, that's not going to impress Gunther the man. So I think it worked for both characters, Randy's comeback.
I'm going to throw up here the cover story of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, cover dated July 31st, 2004. Just over 20 years ago. The headline, Randy Orton about to take elevator ride to the top tier of WWE. My lead is Monday night on Raw. Randy Orton won a Battle Royal that announced to all WWE fans that he was headlining SummerSlam, challenging for the Raw World Heavyweight title, with Chris Benoit retaining the World Heavyweight title against Triple H later in the show in their Iron Man match. That sets up a Benoit Orton title match, getting co-top billing with SmackDown's WWE title match between Bradshaw and Undertaker. It also knocks Triple H out of the top spot at SummerSlam unless he finagles himself into the title match, also making it a 3-way. If not, he'll likely wrestle Eugene in a singles match. Okay, so on to Orton. I said there is also a buzz that Orton may win the title at SummerSlam and then hold it until WrestleMania next year, where a long-awaited Orton-Hunter match could take place. Orton, like The Rock over 5 years earlier, joined the WWF as a smiling babyface who was ridiculed by many, but seen by management as a potential prodigy. Orton hasn't necessarily been on the fast track to the top since getting a smooth and steady push, climbing each rung of the ladder himself rather than being shoved up faster than fans were willing to tolerate. Roman Reigns. During his time off while recovering from an injury, he cemented his conceited persona and showed everyone that he was a natural on the mic. And then I said the question heading into this year was whether he had what it took to move to that next level inside the ring. While John Cena, his peer over on the SmackDown roster, has struggled to elevate his game in the ring to top-tier status, Orton, like lately, has erased all doubt. And I go on more in that cover story, but with Orton talking about the 20 years ago aspect of his first title reign, and I remembered I put an excerpt of that in a recent new edition of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter. We put a little excerpt on the back page every week. I was like, oh, I'm going to go reread what I said about what I was saying about Orton at that time, since Orton brought it up tonight. Fascinating, to compare Orton's path versus Cena's path versus Rock versus Austin. Roman Reigns also, in the sense that he got rejected by fans too. Rock was a smiling babyface, got rejected. Orton, they took a different path with. But 20 years ago, the thought was Randy might be a franchise centerpiece act. And there's some truth to Gunther saying that Randy kind of blew it. Now, I don't know what Randy, if he had been just as mature as he is now, hadn't made mistakes, euphemism for lots of things, where he would have gone. But 20 years ago, all eyes were on him as a guy who might be, instead of or in addition to Cena, a franchise centerpiece guy. What do you think about the framing of him 20 years ago, and kind of tie that in with Gunther, saying, hey, Randy, you could have been something more?
Yeah, it's really interesting to read that and to think back of Randy Orton at that time. I'm trying to think what I thought about him 20 years ago. I think I may have thought he was a little bland, and some of like the attributes weren't fully there. And then obviously like John Cena ends up being the guy that becomes the guy for so long, like a painstakingly long time. And Cena is someone who definitely politicked very well, I think, and kind of kept his head down and seemed like the reliable company guy, like the guy that you could put out for the media, do all the Make-A-Wish appearances, and really just rely on. So it's interesting to see, like at that point, it looked like Orton was going to be the one, and Cena, who came in with this gimmick that was, pretty silly, like the rapper gimmick, and then he toned it down, but kept a lot of like the the childish appearance, like the neon colors, the jorts and everything, like he ends up being the one that's the face of the company for the next like 2 decades. And Randy just doesn't get there. But I think some other things might have like played against Randy too. Like it's funny you mentioned Triple H there and might have found himself being knocked off the card. I think we experienced for too long that it was pretty hard to get Triple H knocked off that card, you know, unless you were like a John Cena where he had to concede to someone younger than him. But yeah, it's interesting to look at that. And I wonder if, you know, Gunther himself read that today, like reflected back on Randy 20 years ago and was like, haha, you see, this did not work out, you know, the way it could have been.
The wrestling media had you pegged for something more than you became. But I mean, Randy absolutely can say he's had a really good career and life has turned out all, you know, the all's well that ends well in a way can be his framing. And by the way, spoiler alert, Orton did take on Benoit one-on-one. He did win the title at SummerSlam for those keeping track. There wasn't any kind of political delay. Triple H did insert him into that. Triple H did end up wrestling Eugene on that show. So there. So now people don't have to look it up if they didn't have that history memorized of what happened a month after I wrote that cover story. The couple chat room comments, Orton hasn't done much for me since he put on 30 pounds of muscle for no reason and no longer moves smoothly. That's not Neon 1984 from Reddit. Welcome. Good to see someone from Reddit here. And let's see. We had a super chat from Lady B who says, I like you, Wade. Aw, thank you. But sending the super chat for my babe, Steph. What do you think about Gunther in a suit? This is for you, Steph. I like him back in his Darth Vader long coat gear. Suit gives off, I'm trying to be champ vibes. What do you think?
Oh, firstly, lots of love for Lady B. She's awesome. I like Gunther in the long coat, but I'm liking his evolution as we're seeing in WWE. Like I like him coming out in the suit as champion because I think with Gunther's persona, like that's what he would do as the champion. So I like it. As long as he likes, you know, stays wearing like the dark colors and everything, like good. But I think he wears the championship well and the suits well too.
Yeah, I like the suits. Not that Lady B wanted to know what I thought. All right. Sean Plichta says in a super chat, go VIP. We'll watch tomorrow. Stephanie is awesome.
Thank you, Sean.
Sean's stopping by. So fan club growing here. Great to hear. Let's see. Okay. We can throw up Zev, new to the chat, as far as I can tell, as far as I remember. The fact that both Cody and Gunther rock suits as world champs is lame. It would make sense if they were both heels in a faction together, but that is clearly not the case. Yeah. I mean, interesting point from Zev. Thanks, Zev. Is it redundant? Does it hurt Cody it's a little, this isn't the biggest issue we're dealing with here, but it doesn't hurt Cody's gimmick at all for Gunther to wear a suit or vice versa if Gunther's trying to be arrogant, but Cody's beloved wearing a suit, or does it fit them in different ways and it's fine?
You know, I think suits are pretty versatile. I think they wear them in different ways. Like I think Gunther's is very classic. Like he feels like a sportsman in a suit, like an athlete in the suit, as you see them. And Cody's are more like he goes for like the 3-piece often, the blue color. His are like a little bit more flashy, but not in a bad way where it's off-putting, not in like a, you know, Conor McGregor way or something. But Cody is that kind of throwback serious champion too. And I think that Cody, the suits could come off bad for Cody. And I think that as Cody's run goes on, I think people will probably find reasons to get irritated by him, and the suits might be one of them. But I think for now, like Cody's doing a good job wearing them as well. I don't think like it hurts. And I think it's nice, you know, to have champions of a wrestling company out there wearing suits. I think they look good, and it looks professional. It looks serious.
It's a throwback to John Laurinaitis as executive VP with his requirement that was so controversial, you know, a couple decades ago, requiring the wrestlers to not wear their gym clothes, their workout clothes, and their fanny packs, and we want to give a better impression to people in airports and fans outside the arena and hotel workers. And I mean, it was part of a time when WWE, I mean, I'm not going to defend everything about John Laurinaitis for sure, but the idea of we're coming through a really rough time with WWE's image and other, the NBA athletes, they show them on TV all arriving in suits looking really dapper. It creates more of a thing. But man, did wrestlers, not everybody, but a lot of them really did not like that policy. But the sidebar, that's just a little history reference. But in terms of on air, having your champions look, I mean, it's not for everybody, but having your champions look high end with their suits, wearing expensive clothes and taking their job seriously. I mean, that it's not a bad thing, but again, it's not ever, I don't think we want CM Punk, if he wins a world title, showing up in a suit every week, unless he somehow makes it his, Stephanie, in some new version.
But CM Punk showed up in a suit and every opportunity. I think we talked about this during the SummerSlam predictions a show about CM Punk's suit wearing. But I was watching the little documentary they had of him at SummerSlam. Did you see that? It's on the YouTube, the WWE's YouTube, and it's just following him about. And he goes to a coffee shop and he's in this vest top that he's cut it too much at the side, is all I'll say. He's cut it too much at the side. And then the next scene is him going to the premiere of Damian Priest's documentary to go on stage, and he's wearing a suit. And he loves wearing these suits now that he's with WWE, and he did that in public appearances when he was champion too. So I think that CM Punk is a real suit guy when he wants to, represent the company like that. But I think suits, they shouldn't be mandatory, but for the people that can make it work, they are a good look.
Yeah. I mean, wrestlers going from the gym to the show and having to go back to their hotel or carry their suit to the gym and then change into it just to sit in a taxi back in the day before Uber, or sit in their rental car and then take their suit off and then hang out backstage before it's time to get in the wrestling. It was a hassle for a lot of guys. And some people were just like, we're big, we're muscular. It's not comfortable. There was a big pushback back then, but on air, not everybody can't wear suits or would get watered down, but if you can make it your own, and as you said, Cody and Gunther have different tastes, and CM Punk also, that can work. One other Orton comment from the chat room. Derek Hubbard says, I think Orton's new muscle look is strategic. The bigger you are, the less you have to do. He can be a body guy without being a bump dummy for smaller wrestlers. Smart move to prolong his career. Maybe, Derek, but I mean, his gimmick isn't a slow lumbering guy who's overly muscular for his frame. His gimmick is he's svelte, he's quick, he's the Viper. And when people put on extra muscle, sometimes, not always, but often that leads to more injury because they end up, tearing muscles that they wouldn't tear otherwise if they're muscle bound. Stephanie, what do you think of Orton's look on this comeback compared to? Obviously, it was always toned and had more muscle than the average person, more muscle than I've ever had. But for wrestling, he was seen as more of a slender, toned guy, not a bodybuilder.
Yeah, it was quite a shocker when he came back with that much muscle on him, especially given his age. You have to wonder strategically why he's done that, because I would think it would make you slower, make you more injury prone, but maybe there's certain things that he's not able to do still that requires movement, that he just feels like being a bigger guy works for him. At that age, he's still, I'm sure, going to be able to hit the RKOs out of nowhere, because that's something he'll keep practicing to make sure he'll always do as his signature move. But I think maybe if he feels he's physically slowed down a bit, kind of taking on a more muscular look as you approach 50 is probably best for him. But I don't think he's lost anything in the ring from the performances I've seen since he's come back. He's still been good. I haven't noticed anything bad.
What are the chances Orton beats Gunther, gets his 15 title reign? Someone in the chat wants to see it.
No, I don't think there's any chance they're taking this belt off Gunther, especially in Germany. No.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's pause and formally introduce ourselves in the show, and then we'll get to our video callers, emails, and more chat room discussion. A lot more on the show, more on the Judgment Day. A lot of follow-up to that. CM Punk returned, brawled with Drew after lying about travel issues. How dare him? and developments in the Intercontinental title main event and the women's tag team title situation, and also Alpha Academy versus American Made. I always want to call them American Males, and then that WCW theme song gets in my head, and I don't like that. So I have to get used to saying American Made. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show covering the Monday, August 12th, 2024 episode of WWE Raw. I'm Wade Keller, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter, which we showed you a glimpse of earlier on the screen. If you become a full VIP member at pwtorch.com/govip, part of your monthly membership, or you can get a 3-month or 1-year membership too, is full access to our library of those fascinating back issues. They're 12 to 16 pages. Well, they started off as 8-pagers way back in the day, but roughly 12 to 16 pages of content documenting wrestling contemporaneously, editorials, Torch Talk interviews with some of pro wrestling's biggest names on and off camera, backstage news items, star ratings for tons of pay-per-views since the late 1980s, roundtable reviews, all kinds of great stuff. It's fun to lose yourself in the back issue section, learn about history, and just see what we were saying about stars on the rise who are now retired or in their prime or flamed out. pwtorch.com/govip is how you become a VIP member. We'll tell you more about that later. But we're here to talk Raw on the post show, which, by the way, you could also subscribe to as a podcast or watch us on YouTube. So if you're listening to us on a podcast right now, you can join us live on YouTube on the PW Torch channel after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. If you're a VIP member or Patreon supporter, in my TV report or on the Patreon main feed, we give you a link to be a video caller. So you can call the show. You can block your camera if you'd rather just do audio, and that's totally fine too. We have some people who do that. But that code is available. It is just for Patreon supporters and VIP members at this stage. So if you want to do that, that's another perk for going VIP. Tons of other benefits from VIP membership, which we'll tell you about, as I said, later on. So as we get to our video callers and emails, we got to give you the email address if it's not handy. WadeKellerPodcast@gmail.com. WadeKellerPodcast@gmail.com. And that's another way you can participate in the show, even if you don't watch our live feed on YouTube on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday nights. If you do watch us on YouTube, sometimes, but not always, but you also listen to podcasts, just search Wade Keller in your podcast app. The red logo and blue logo will show up. The post shows are the red logo. So if you like listening to podcasts, it's easier for you. We certainly encourage you to do that. And there's some cool flashback shows and other content on the podcast feed that isn't here on YouTube. The blue logo show is our flagship podcast feed. It's not post-show format. It's a more traditional podcast format featuring interviews, pay-per-view previews, flashbacks, and our weekly flagship. Jason Powell from ProWrestling.net and the Pro Wrestling Boom podcast joins me tomorrow. And you can send your email questions for the flagship now for Jason and me to address on tomorrow's show. WadeKellerPodcast@gmail.com. And when you watch us live or listen to us live on YouTube, you can also participate in the chat room, which we've already quoted a few times. So a very interactive show, and we invite you to participate. The co-host that you see or see and hear, or excuse me, that you hear or see and hear, depending on your consumption of this show, is Stephanie Chase, returning to cover with me Raw, WWE. Stephanie, good to have you here on a Monday night. Welcome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Wade. Thank you for having me on a WWE post show. I'm excited.
Yes, this is good. So Stephanie, tell people what you're doing, how they can read more from you, see more of you covering wrestling.
And yeah, you can find me here on YouTube at Stephanie Chase Wrestling. I put up interviews there. I'm trying to do one a week. I just put up one this morning with Michael Oku, who fought MJF yesterday. So I spoke to him a couple hours after he did that. He's the Rev Pro British champion. That was really fun. And then before that, I had Deonna Purrazzo from AEW over on the channel, as well as Athena, Roxanne Perez from NXT. And I should have another interview coming later this week. And then you can also find me my writing over on Substack. Just look for Stephanie Chase. It's there. And on X at Stephanie M. Chase. Oh, you're on mute, Wade.
Stephanie, what do you say we get back to some Raw discussion here?
Yeah, let's go.
So before we get to our first video caller, just want to get your quick thoughts on tonight's main event. And this was sort of an ensemble show. I didn't feel like there was like one thing obvious to talk about above all else. So, but the main event, Intercontinental title, best of 3 falls. Braun Breaker Sammy gets the first fall. Braun Breaker gets 2 straight falls to win. What do you think of the match, and what do you think it says about Breaker and Sammy?
I thought it was pretty good. I think it's probably a definitive end for this rivalry. Maybe well, I'm not really sure how necessary it was, to be honest, after Sammy won the first pay-per-view match between them, and then Braun beat Sammy so quickly at SummerSlam. And I was very surprised when Sammy took the first fall, because I really thought it was going to be 2 straight to Braun. And he did get a dominant win at the end. But I kind of felt like it was a little bit of a flat main event from some of the other things that we saw on the show. I would have maybe like rejigged things, just with everything, with like Punk and Drew, and then all the stuff at the start with the Judgment Day. The ending wasn't as high as me as some of the points in the rest of the show, but the match was fine. But I think this is like the end of Sammy and Braun, and I think Braun can move forward, and he certainly feels more like a babyface now. I got that impression like pretty much as soon as the SummerSlam match was over, that they seem to be presenting him in more of a babyface light. Oh, you're on mute, Wade.
Darn, 2 in a row. I think I like the match a little bit more than you, but WWE right now is having main events where they know people aren't going to be watching in as large of a number at the end of the show, and it's there to give you something resembling a match worth sticking around for, and that feels like a bigger match than anything else on the show, or tied for it. But they also are putting the storyline developments and angles, more earlier in the show. Although it's working out, because someone in the chat earlier just said, the problem with Raw being 3 hours isn't the 3-hour format. It was the writing and the booking and the presentation of it, because they are on a streak of making the show not a show, like you said, where you sort of grit your teeth and wait for the 2.5-hour mark or so to watch the main event. You get to the main event, and I think it's a good match. It's a marquee match. It's a title that means something. Sammy's chasing the title. They add 2 out of 3 falls to add something different to the mix. Braun Breaker's on the rise. I think they have a lot of talking points. But you can watch a 3-hour Raw and have that as your main event and think it's the 5th most important thing that happened on the show, because they have gotten a lot of other characters over, and a lot of the stories that they're telling are well written. I mean, when I look back at today on PWTorch.com, the website that I write for, and we have a bunch of other people writing for it. Hope everyone's checking it out. PWTorch.com. That's where you find my TV reports. I put up 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years ago Raw report today. I usually don't do a triple thread on those, doing all 3. And it's just crazy when you look back at what they were doing, especially 20 years ago, but even 10 years ago. And when we were complaining about the 3-hour Raw format 20 years ago, there was just awful stuff going. Lita got, breaking to Matt Hardy, the news I got impregnated by Kane. Stephanie, yeah, exactly. Stephanie McMahon against Brie Bella. There's just like weird stuff 10 and 20 years ago, and then 30 years ago, it's this 1-hour format still. And I think literally the main event was a squash match on a 1-hour Raw. Yeah. So it's crazy when you look at the evolution in kind of a snapshot, and you scroll through or read through my reports from those 3 decades. It's so much better right now. So anyway, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Raw doesn't feel like 3 hours anymore, which is like the best compliment I can give it. As I really like this week's. Last week's was one of the best they've done in like a really long time. But yeah, it doesn't feel like 3 hours anymore. They're really, really hitting on something.
Yeah, and honestly, I hope they can keep it up. Hope they can keep it up. All right, let's go to our first video caller here. We'll bring in Rude Dog. Rude Dog, we are ready to bring you on. What's going on? Good to see you.
Hey, good to talk to you, Wade. Good to talk to you, Stephanie. So, how do you think Damian Priest is doing as a babyface right now? I know he was kind of been one for a bit, but kind of in between. But now he's full on board babyface. How do you think he's doing?
Yeah, good question. Stephanie, what do you think of Priest? I mean, he's playing to the crowd. What was something else he did in the match that I haven't seen him doing? He's taking on the babyface, persona at this point.
I think he's doing really well. I love the whole opening of Raw, right through to the Damian Priest match. It gave me such Attitude Era vibes, but like in the good stuff you remember from the Attitude Era, not the stuff you watch now and go, oh no, like how did I ever like that? But it was really good. But that moment where he was behind Liv and Dom was just awesome. Like in the crowd, he looked gigantic, and it was just such a good visual. And I think the thing about Priest is he's always had this really cool guy persona that can kind of go either way. Like you can either play that as a heel or as a babyface, and I think he's found. The fans have certainly been on a journey with him and with Rhea as well, coming from this heel faction. And I think by the time we got to what was the end of his title reign, he got the fans fully behind him. Like they wanted good things for him. They could see where the storyline was going as well. So I think he's done a great job as a babyface so far. And I think feels like the most established that he's ever been, really.
Yeah, I like him so far too. I don't think he's going to be like centerpiece, top tier babyface 6 months or 9 or 12 months or 18 months from now. But I think he's in a better position now and more relevant than he had been before this. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just afraid he was just going to like fall off the card completely, like after losing the title. But I think so far so good. So props to him.
Yep. Yeah, what else? Rhoda.
And so do you think Odyssey Jones can rehabilitate the dead act that is the New Day? Or is he just there for a Xavier Woods heel turn? What do you think?
I'm enjoying seeing New Day not just on a treadmill hooping and hollering and being obnoxious and feeling like they've overstayed their welcome as an act. This is adding something intriguing to it. I think we're seeing. I was processing watching this. If Xavier sides with Karrion Kross eventually because he's upset with Kofi befriending Odyssey and not paying enough attention to him, however they tell that story, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to be upset with him because Kofi is sort of a bad friend right now, obliviously, just totally siding with his friendship with Odyssey right now and kind of overacting and knocking him kind of out of the scene a little bit. I'm not sure what their intent is and how they're going to get to wherever they're going, but I'm starting to feel like Xavier has a case for being upset with how Kofi is dealing with this new friendship. Hopefully, if that's not what they're going for, they can steer it in a different direction. But I'm starting to feel a little bad for Xavier, and I didn't know I had that in me. Stephanie.
Gosh, the New Day act is so stale, and this particular storyline with Karrion Kross feels like it's been going on for so long with like no developments whatsoever until last week when Odyssey Jones came in, and it's a pretty odd storyline because I like Karrion Kross, and I think I might be one of the only people that does, but I think he's he's not miscast in his role, but like this is just such an odd feud for someone doing his character to be in with the New Day. And I know that the New Day, like all three of them have said like they never want to break up or anything like that, but they did get really boring, and it's really unfortunate what happened with Big E. So I think Odyssey coming in is at least like something interesting going on with that faction, because Xavier and Kofi have felt like really ever since the Big E incident, like they're just there, like a part of the furniture. So I don't know if it will work out, whether they stay together as a new trio or whether like Xavier leaves, but I'm at least slightly intrigued by something that the New Day is doing, and it's been so long since I've been able to say that. So they're trying something. Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Where do you think they're going with this? Odyssey Jones coming in, the announcers talking about him being idolizing Rey Mysterio, befriending Kofi gregariously, enthusiastically. Xavier's trying to celebrate afterwards, and he almost like hits Xavier, raising his arms, and Xavier looks like sort of irritated or thrown off. Like, what story do you think they're telling right now, and what emotions are we supposed to have at this point?
I think they're trying to recreate the Tony Storm Mariah May storyline, but with with Odyssey. I'm not sure. It could be that he's like a plant from Karrion Cross to like infiltrate them and tear them apart. I think that might be the most interesting way they can go with it. But if not, maybe he is just someone that like Xavier has brought in, and Kofi is gonna not like it in turn. I really don't know where they're going with it, because he's so new, and he's someone that I don't think any of us had thought of for about a year until he came in last week. But I think maybe the most interesting thing would be if Karrion kind of put him there to tear the group apart.
Interesting. Brewdog, back to you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Like, I kind of hope that happens. And Karrion Cross has actually been watchable, and he's been just so milquetoast and boring, like, for most of his career, in my opinion. So it seems like this is like put a spring in his step as well. Mm-hmm. So the storyline. So that's cool.
Yep.
So what's the deal with the new faction name, Pure Fusion Collective? This might be like the worst name I've heard in a long time. I mean, there's a lot of bad ones in AEW and stuff, but in WWE, I was just like, oh my God. Like, I kind of couldn't believe it. Like, and then the match wasn't very good. Shayna Baszler totally like whiffed this like knee spot, and Michael Cole was like, oh, she didn't catch all of that, and totally missed the move whatsoever. And also, why are Damage Control baby faces?
Oh. Lots of good questions there. Stephanie, your reaction indicates to me visually that you have an opinion on PFC.
Yeah, it's an absolutely terrible name. So bad. Like, I've always supported Shayna Baszler. I think she's really great, and I really like Sonya Deville as well. And I get that they're putting these three particular women together because they're like legit fighters, shoot fighters. But whoever came up with this name, like, it's awful. Not that I have a better one to suggest right now off the top of my head, but like, they have a whole writing team there, and they've had a while to think about this, and that's all they could come up with. Like, these annoying, like, quite convoluted names, and they always give women's factions bad. Like, Damage Control is a bad name. I mean, didn't they previously try to do a like submission sorority or something, then find out that was something else? Like, they really go through it with giving these female factions bad names. So yeah, I couldn't believe it when they said the name. I had to like go on Twitter and see exactly what it was that had just been said there. Women's tag division feels just really messy, quite like the ending of that match. I really, that was the low point of Raw for me. I felt like I just wasted my time with that match and how it ended. And I have no idea why Damage Control are now faces. I think it's because Io Sky and Kairi Sane are actually really good workers. So like, they, and Bailey's not there. So they just turn them face because they're spectacular. And the current women's champions are heels, but there doesn't seem to be any logic to anything they're doing or any real structure to it. And it's a problem that's been with these women's tag titles for so long now.
That vignette, I was watching it and I'm thinking, am I supposed to like them? And I didn't like dislike them watching the vignette, the promo they did, but it's just there's I would think they'd be taking an opportunity to tell us a story and get us kind of on board with how I think they want us reacting to them. And instead it kind of feels like a three-way feud with with triple threat match next week with nobody to cheer for other than sort of, well, Kyrie and Io are better, more flashy wrestlers and more experienced, so I guess we'll cheer for them. But I mean, WWE did a very effective job telling a story that they were mean to Bayley. They were mean girls. They were just snickering and ostracizing her. Nobody who would cheer that. So why are they different now? That's fresh in our minds. And I almost think they need to, and I don't know how they do it, but do a storyline where they apologize. They talk things out with Bayley and they hug it out or something, so that if Bayley forgives them, then we can. But that's a cross-brand challenge.
Yeah.
Stephanie.
I know, I was just gonna say, like, it would give Bayley something to do, because I mean, ever since like they did tell that really good story that they put some thought into, and then Bayley ended up having a really rubbish title reign, and so Io and Kyrie haven't done much better afterwards. So maybe they do all need to come together. And Per Dakota's injured again, which is sad as well. So it's just been very unfortunate for Damage Control.
Yeah, definitely. We have a super chat, so I'll give a shout out here for everybody. Randolph Ochoa says, the Pure Fusion Collective, let the bashing begin. I knew I saw that earlier, and so we bashed them enough. I honestly, I don't like the name, but I don't think I dislike it as much as the rest of you. McAfee did have to explain Fusion, of course, is MMA and wrestling, and I mean, I'm glad he said that, but it's not catchy.
It's not. Well, I'm like, imagine having it on a shirt or something, at least when you walked about in like a NWO shirt or a DX shirt, even if people didn't know what they were, it felt like, okay, that must be a band or something at least. But like, imagine with walking around with Pure Fusion Collective, like, people would just be like, what? Like, is that some kind of restaurant or something? Like
totally.
Different cuisines,
It actually sounds like a reality show on like a Bravo or Cooking Channel or something. Some sort of cooking show. Yeah. All right, Rude Dog, back to you.
All right, that was funny. So Pat McAfee today on his show did some skit where he pretended like the Wyatt Six is invading his space, like where he does his like ESPN podcast show or whatever. Like, and today was the first time I was a little worried about the Wyatt Six. Like, they were barely showcased at all. There was another Bo Dallas sit down thing that was pretty good, but it really wasn't mentioned or featured or anything. And I really hope they don't have anything to do with Pat McAfee. He did his poop joke of the day when he said some diarrhea thing, and I was just like,
I missed that. When did he say that? I thought we made it through a whole show.
Oh no. I wrote it down.
Yeah, when was it? I have to add it to my report. I have to add it to my written report. It is the report of record. If the streak is alive. I don't think we had the bitchometer get reset tonight, though. No
bitch, but he definitely said diarrhea. I can't find it right now. I'll send it in the comments later.
Okay, fair. Yeah, we don't need to extend this discussion.
But anyways, what about the Wyatt Six, like, being kind of like, not really much of anything today?
It's a good point. It's a temptation on the shows to talk about what happened. Sometimes the question to ask, or a hot topic, is what didn't happen. We had Bo Dallas react to a video that seemed to interact with Uncle Howdy. I think there was some mission statements in there. I thought that was a good vignette to fill a week with the Wyatt Six. I don't think they should be a weekly act on TV. So honestly, I was fine with it, but considering it was such a big deal last week, and if you want to portray the Wyatt Six as a really big ongoing deal, when they have their first match, and then you lead off the show talking about the personal drama with the Judgment Day, and then you just sort of late in the show go, "Oh, that Wyatt Six wrestled last week. Let's throw another VHS vignette." There's a message it's sending a little bit, which is they're intriguing, but they're not the biggest deal. They're just another act in the mix. And so, how you feature people, how you frame them after a big match and angle the previous week can define them in the eyes of fans. It can set the tone. Stephanie, how do you feel about that?
I was surprised there wasn't more Wyatt Six. I'm still not totally sold on them and how I feel about them, but I did think that their match was good, better than I'd maybe thought it would be. But I do almost feel like WWE, Triple H, like, doesn't want to go fully with them, like they do, because everything moves so slowly with them. They had that big angle where they maybe killed a few people when they debuted, and then we got like a lot of vignettes, and it was only last week that we got their first ever match, and then this week no in-person follow-up. So I just feel like maybe WWE is conscious of not overdoing it with them, because they're aware that some parts of the fan base don't really like it or think that it takes away from the stuff that they're doing that is trying to be like a little bit more realistic, like your Drew and your Punk and even the Rhea and Liv stuff. So I get the feeling that there's a bit of that in it. But then as much as they're telling us like, oh, it's not supernatural, like this is serious, then you get a video where Chad Gable was like at the Olympics and he makes like a comment about the Wyatt Six, which I forget what his exact comment was, but it was almost kind of comical, like the kind of thing that you would more expect from like a Miz. And then I don't watch the Pat McAfee show, but I know there's been bits where the Wyatt Six have been mentioned and stuff. And if you don't want them to come across as any kind of novelty act or like bad Halloween gimmick, like he is the worst guy to get involved and sell them, because he is very bad at playing like a straight man on anything, and especially not something like this. Any clips I've seen of him regarding the Wyatt Six have just been bad. And gosh, we didn't need, when they showed that amazing segment with Bronson Reed and Seth from last week, we didn't need McAfee's physics over it. Like, I don't know what they were doing with that. So yeah, but
they're just looking for an excuse to wedge McAfee in more in the show. And Cole's like, you're the best color analyst in the business, and I don't know. Yeah, Cole's a fan of his, but no. Was a comment you referred to when McAfee said you don't want to be on the opposite side of the Wyatt Six, but you want to see what they're going to do next? Was that what you're referring to, Stephanie, when you said that McAfee made a comment about them?
No. Chad Gable did.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like a really brief one during his Olympic video. It's something about like getting away from them, and it was just a little like comical.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, he said he had unfinished business with them. I'm trying to remember what that was, but anyway, Rude Dog, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I just really hope they just keep the Wyatt Six away from Pat McAfee. Like, I mean, I think he was actually supposed to be more involved, because if you remember when they first debuted when Nikki Cross brought the VHS for the first time, it was supposed to be for Pat McAfee, but he had a death in the family, so he wasn't there. So I'm afraid this is going to be something that's like involved with him and just like kill the gimmick completely. So
yeah, no,
right.
I tone wise, they got to be careful, Brewdog. I don't mean to not comment on that aspect of it. I think, I'm still not quite sure what their hope is for the Wyatts long term in terms of how they want them to be framed, and obviously they think they get some equity out of somebody of Pat McAfee's stature in the sports media world talking about them, but I wouldn't force it going forward if it doesn't make sense to keep them involved, because it can define them in a way that ends up being counterproductive.
Right on. All right.
Yeah.
One last thing. The name Vincent Winey has to be one of the worst jobber names I've ever heard. Like, I mean, supposedly this guy is at the Performance Center. I really hope that's not his real working name. And just, I wish the best for that guy, because that's just bad.
Vincent Winey, a linebacker with Morehead State University. Is that him?
So that's his real name?
Well, there is a Vincent Winey. So I think so. Yeah, I think that's his real name.
Wow.
So Winey. So there you have it. You just made fun of a whole family of people, Rude Dog, who have gone through life having people make fun of them, and now he gets on the national stage and he's tuned in, wanting to know what people thought of his performance, and it's like living 3rd, 4th, 5th grade all over again for the family.
Wow. I think it's a big deal though that they let someone with that name like on their TV. Like imagine the Vince McMahon days and a guy called Vincent Winey turns up. You know, I think that would have been changed immediately.
I know. Yes. I mean, it's not like, you know, it's some famous, ultra famous football player, and you don't want to mess with it. So, Randall A, by the way, liked the physics segment. Stephanie, the Pat McAfee, all the stats. It's like a sports science segment on ESPN. Randall A in the chat says, I think they should do more of those. So,
do they use kangaroos as weight comparison on ESPN?
That chat room, let us know. Okay. Rudok, anything else for us?
I think that'll do it. Yeah, no one needs to know about kangaroos or elephants or wild boars. Like, that was terrible. So I know they got to wedge him in to do some crap, but do something better than that. That's all.
Right. Thanks, Rudok. Always fun having
Have a great
you.
night.
Thanks for watching, listening, calling. All right, let's go to the heel Mark, our next caller. Mark, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Good to see you.
Dude, I love being on here with you, man. I love it. Stephanie,
Awesome.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I got notes again. Trying to be professional, man. I'm trying to be like you. By the way, did you get my email?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I'll get back to you within 6 to 12 weeks if my usual pace of responding to emails is.
That's cool.
I'll do my best.
That's cool. I was just, hey, I'm reaching out to everybody.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So, I love the intro. I loved it because I'm a huge Dom fan.
We haven't talked about that yet. I'm glad you're bringing that up.
I loved it so much. I really did. But it made sense because, you know, Rhea has this thing with Liv, and she's kind of mad at Dom. But yet you're throwing Damian in there, but Damian is mad at Finn. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'd rather see the Damian Finn thing, but who else are you going to throw in there with Rhea? It's just, it's.
I've thought about that, Mark. I've thought about that as we saw the trajectory of this. That you've got Balor turning on Priest. You have Rhea and Priest likely being the baby faces splitting off from a new heel Judgment Day makeup, and you got Dom and Balor and Liv opposite of Rhea and Priest. And I was like, are they going to make it a 3-on-2 match and just treat Dom like he's not serious, or what? Stephanie, how do you feel about that conundrum? Is it a conundrum? Is it no big deal? They can do Priest Balor 1-on-1, but they
I think we will definitely get like a big Priest Balor 1-on-1 match, but at the minute I like Damian has Rhea's back, which I really like. Like, he's been the member of the Judgment Day that's like there for her. He sees what Dom did, and I think that Rhea and Priest's friendship is really important. And I think with everything we saw with Rhea and Dom and how great a storyline that was, it's good to see them maybe now try and tell a platonic friendship storyline between Damian and Rhea as these two dominant characters. And I see like per Dom is always kind of going to be the fall guy for everyone. Like he was initially manipulated by Rhea. He's definitely still being manipulated by Liv. And I think that Balor as kind of the evil mastermind behind the Judgment Day breakup, him and Liv, I think he knows that he can just like throw Dominic to the wolves and JD, McDonough, and Carlito to the wolves as well, and hang back before he like takes his moment to get Damian. So, and I think it's also good at just stretching out this Judgment Day breakup storyline where we now can have Damian and Rhea team up against Liv and Dom, and we're still able to hold off on the Balor match and the other things they want to do with that, and keep Damian like in a prominent storyline, like we were talking about before, so he doesn't fall off after losing the belt. So I'm pretty okay with it.
Yeah, I get what Mark is saying though, that it does feel like the heat with Priest is on Balor. And now he's being diverted into Rhea's fight. And they both can happen. There's plenty of weeks and opportunities for that to happen. But, you know, Basher Berlin is going to have Priest not against Balor, who cost him the world title, but fighting alongside Liv against her ex. So, you know, Mark's nodding along. That's kind of what he's getting at. I mean, it's in a way, it's sort of a good problem to have. You have two matches that people want to see Priest in, and you kind of pick one. I think they chose the more interesting one. You know, Priest Balor, I think you can frankly headline a Raw with and not have people going, wait, you should have saved that for pay-per-view. Whereas I didn't do that. Whereas you can have this tag match. I think this is where the most fan interest is by far, even if Balor did cost Priest the world title. Sadly, people are more, I don't know if it's sadly, it's a tribute to Liv and Rhea and Dom, but I think people are definitely more interested in that than Priest avenging the loss of the world heavyweight title. Mark, back to you. Sorry, Mark, start over again. I muted you because of background noise. Just start over there.
This kind of also stems off the intro. So I really love, like I said, Dom's one of my faves. I love Dom. I also love the new shirt. Like the new shirt, I was like, ooh, I love that. But I think because he's only 27, like he's got a bright future ahead of him. I think like another 3 years of being like this hardcore heel, and then you get the babyface turn. I don't know. That's one of my thoughts I want to discuss with you guys. But here's my big one.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys ever discussed this before, because I've only been coming around for a couple of weeks, but this is my theory on Judgment Day 2.0. I don't know if you guys remember this, but like about a year ago, like when Judgment Day was like first forming and like Finn just joined, like right before he joined, Liv Morgan and Finn vowed that they were going to take out Judgment Day together. And then Liv gets injured, and then Finn joins Judgment Day, right? Think about this. So now Liv comes back, and then Finn takes the hotel key that she gave Dom. Like the hotel key is seen on the table. Finn takes the hotel key. So Finn goes to the hotel room to talk to Liv. Finn is the one seen getting out of the car, talking to Liv. Finn and Liv vowed to destroy the Judgment Day. Because what did the Judgment Day do to them? Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest like made Finn Balor and Liv Morgan's life a living hell. So Finn Balor and Liv Morgan vowed to ruin Judgment Day. Very, 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 very long storytelling. Do you get where I'm going with this? I don't know if you guys seen this or if you touched on this at all, but
no, I know people are talking about that. I think it's weird that they dropped the little clue, Stephanie, of Finn Balor and Liv, the hotel key thing. If you paid attention to the direction where Finn sent Dom backstage, it was to send him away from Liv, and then Balor went the direction of Liv. Nothing more was said or thought about it, and now nothing has happened about regarding that. Should we keep our eye on that? Do you think that those were red herrings meant to strike up speculation and conversation, but it's not really anything to pay any more attention to? What's your take on that, and what do you want to see happen as far as that goes?
Yeah, I'm still keeping my eye on that. So with how the Judgment Day kind of formed and their initial interactions with Liv and Finn, I don't think like they've been planning this for, since then, but I think that circumstances may have brought them back to this Liv Balor connection. I definitely do think there's a high chance that even though we're seeing Liv all over Dom right now, that it's not actually real, and it's something that her and Balor have set up, as with Balor being the mastermind behind everything, and that would work well with how Damian is, teaming with Rhea against Liv and Dom, because I think, at the end of this, Dom, with how his character is, he has to end up as the one that has nothing. Like, I don't think Dom's character is going to suit getting the girl, like getting like Liv Morgan. We always, like with Rhea, we definitely thought for a very long time that Rhea was manipulating Dom, like just trying to get him away from his family and stuff. And then him basically ending up like winning the affections of this attractive girl, Liv Morgan, is just like, that's just not Dom's character, is it? Like, he's just not meant to be that guy. So I think like the actual end game, he has to be kind of left as the loser. So it wouldn't surprise me, and I think it would actually be the more interesting turn if it turns out that Finn Balor and Liv Morgan have been playing even Dominic all along. I think that would be much more interesting than Liv, just managing to get Dominic away from Rhea. I don't know what you would do with Dominic after that, because he gets so much incredible heel heat that I can't imagine him ever being a face. But there will probably have to become a time where people do feel like a little bit of sympathy for him, because a guy can only go through so much. But I can't imagine what that would look like. But I definitely, I get what Mark is saying and where he's going with it. And yeah, it would not surprise me if it's been Balor and Liv all along.
I'm intrigued by that. I do think broadly, Dominic's a babyface in 4 years from now, and it might be 2 years from now, a year and a half from now, might be 3.5 years, but 4 years from now, I think Dom's a babyface, and I think he's popular, and I think fans think he paid his dues. I think he's just been good enough personality-wise on the mic. He's got the Mysterio name. There's going to be a reconciliation with his dad. There's a huge story. There's a story arc they can tell that will lead to reconciliation, and I think they need to tell that story on WWE TV between those two. And I think when it happens, people are going to be all into it. And Dom, I mean, I don't know if Dom's ever going to be world champion, and I know that sounds like to some people crazy to suggest he even might be. And I don't know that has to be his role to have a really good career, but I think he can be a good babyface act for them. But I do think it's not a guy who still looks like he's 21. I mean, it's going to be when he's looks a little bit older, and people kind of maybe forget a little bit about the punk ass kid chapter of his stay here. Heel Mark, back to you.
Yeah, I muted myself because I was trying to be polite.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And then I don't have to unmute you. So
no, as I call Dominic Mysterio, you're gonna laugh about this. I call him Mysterio Guerrero. So
yeah, I get it.
My own little nickname for the guy. I love Dom, but Stephanie, you're not alone, because I love Karrion Kross. I really do. I just feel so bad for the guy because it's just like they can't find anything to do with him. It's just like, I feel horrible for him.
Yeah.
But I have an unpopular opinion, and this is where I'm going to get heat.
All right.
I'm not a fan of Obafemi. I'm not saying he's not talented. I'm really not. He's extremely talented. I see what he does in the ring, like the match that he did with Dijak and what's it, Josh Alexander at Stand and Deliver. Yeah, it was him, right? Yeah, but dude, I thought that was like match of the year for me, but I'm just not a fan of the guy. Now, this is something I want opinions.
Mark, we lost your audio. Just got muffled. Stephanie, was it for you too?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Where'd you lose me at?
Yeah, we can hear you. It just sounds like you're
It
shouting
sounds
in
like you
another
switched.
room.
Yeah, it sounds like you
Yeah.
switched mic or something.
Maybe you're.
Hang on, let me try something here. How about now?
No, it's still real weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for people. I mean, we can barely hear you, but we can hear you, but barely, and it sounds rough. But go ahead and kind of make your final comment, and we can
Okay.
translate for everybody.
So I have an unpopular opinion.
Well, we heard everything about Obafemi. So
This last part here that I want to say is, this is where everyone's gonna hate me.
Yeah.
I really feel that we should have a mid-card title for the women. Now let me explain, and I'll even give you.
Just because your sound quality is so rough, Mark, maybe it's better to either fix your audio or email us if you have a case to be made for it, or do it in like 3 sentences, because it's really tough here. It's
Do you want
not
me
great.
to try and call back?
Yeah, try calling back. Let's do that instead,
Okay.
because then we can hear your case.
All right.
Cool. All right, Stephanie, we have Brian Zillum, who attended Raw tonight in person.
Ooh.
Wasn't sure he'd be able to join us. He sent an email already with some notes from the show. But Brian, welcome. Good to see you.
How's it going, guys?
Good.
Hey.
So if you're driving, please keep your eye on the road. We do not want to be
No, you're good, Wade. I've got you
on the speaker. Okay.
Yeah, so you're all
Yep.
set.
Yeah. So please stay focused on the road for your sake and everybody else's. What was the show like for you in person? I know in your email you talked about it just being like a party that everyone wants to attend. And you said, I can't recall being in attendance at a WWE event where everyone was happy with what they saw. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, so in terms of just being at a Raw or a SmackDown, I would say it's probably been over a decade since I've been at just a live WWE TV show. You know, I've done the PLEs, big shows. I've done like my share of just NXT shows, and those are like fun. But it's weird. It kind of feels like a kind of spring breaky Mardi Gras situation where everybody's just happy. They're probably about 4 or 5 drinks in, having a good time. The music's always just going, and everybody's just really, really happy to be there. I was surprised to see the ticket prices because, oh man, those ticket prices were high. But Wade, I don't know if you and Stephanie already talked about it. So this was actually a pretty hot ticket. So Monday Night Raw has not been in Austin, Texas since 2019. So it's been quite a while. And I would recommend you not look at that. Don't revisit that card. That was the go home show, the Saudi, which I believe featured Randy Orton, Triple H, and where the Undertaker almost died because Goldberg dropped him on his head. So that go home show was rough. So this was certainly not only a hot ticket, but generally speaking, the city of Austin is always a hot crowd anyway. So. I was actually there this evening with your former colleague, Cameron Hawkins, now of The Ringer, and I was talking to him, and I compared this crowd to similar to, do you guys remember one of the first crowds AEW did after the pandemic? It was actually in Austin. I don't know if either of you recall that show or Atmosphere, but that show was bonkers. But that was also one of the first shows on the road. So that's what I would comp it to. Obviously, the Moody Center, it was probably, I don't know what the final number, but it was probably Booty Center probably had a good, probably 1,500 more people, but from old, young, it didn't matter. Everybody was really having a great time, and they could have really thrown like probably a 24-hour or a 24/7 championship segment that went 20 minutes, and everybody would have just went wild for it.
So, tell us about the top reactions of the night, and how did CM Punk? Obviously, he came out under different circumstances than someone with a ring entrance, but just kind of rank the top tier reactions. I'm curious about Damian Priest, if anything came across in person compared to on TV. And Sami Zayn, obviously, big name on the show. So yeah, Rhea Ripley, I assume, might be at the top of the list, but yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, and I don't know what you guys have said about the show. I think Otis got one of the loudest reactions all night in that entire venue.
Interesting.
I can't understand it, Wade. It's just the craziest thing to experience because, I thought after, the American Alpha angle, it was, he was going to kind of just exist, but it's weird how this is carried over for a very, very long time. I mean, the opening segment with Rhea, she got a crazy, crazy reaction. And I think Priest, they believe him as a, top babyface. But the Otis reaction, just from anything he was doing, was just really, really crazy. And then this was my first time experiencing the live crowd singing I Hear Voices in My Head, which I wouldn't have thought that would be a thing in 2024. I did not have that in my bingo card at all. But yeah, I would say Otis, Rhea, and then probably even Randy.
Otis, Rhea, Randy. All right, cool. Stephanie, do you have a question for Brian?
Oh, it's interesting, like what you were saying about it feeling like a party, almost like a spring break, because I felt like I really enjoyed the opening segment, and to me, it felt really hot and very Attitude Era-esque, and it made me think, like, is this what we're getting to as we approach the Netflix era? There was at least one comment that Rhea made that was kind of adult, maybe went over some of the kids' heads. But were you getting that kind of vibe that we are moving towards something that feels like a little bit more 90s-esque, and that as we approach them going on to Netflix, that we could be seeing like the product change in that way, and like from the live atmosphere too?
Stephanie, I think you hit that 100% on the head in that opening promo, which honestly, there was about 2 or 3 things that were kind of, pretty strong and suggested that I really didn't care for, quite honestly. And I think this particular type of story feud, whatever you want to call it, it's definitely, I think it's kind of fun trash TV to a certain extent. And it's not personally for me, but yeah. And then when I took a step back and thought about it, what you exactly just said, it's like, well, this is kind of the direction that we're going into, because it's interesting that you said 90s, Stephanie. Like, it's interesting to see, and well, it's kind of like like insane to see all the signs in the crowd again, because you don't really recall seeing signs those popular late 90s 2000 eras, just where you see all these fun signs in the crowd. I will say I did feel uncomfortable at one point where Samantha Irving, Wade, I don't know if you saw it in my notes, was leading, they were doing a DX kind of sing along in the crowd, and the young kids on the Titantron doing the kind of the gesture of the DX symbol. It just, oh, okay, times are changing, and I don't know if these small children know what that actually means. And when when you're growing up, and as a 5th grader, you're doing that in class and not knowing what it actually means.
Yeah.
And as a father now, you see kids doing it. It's like, oh, okay, that's why my mom and dad were a little bit uncomfortable seeing children doing that. But no, you're absolutely right. Language wise, I don't think anybody really said anything else kind of like, edgy other than that, really. Some of the Titantron stuff, like as far as interviews, was kind of hard to see, like hear. Didn't really hear a lot of the Pete Dunne interviews. Heard a little bit of the Miz. Obviously, like in ring, you heard a little good amount of Randy and Gunther's back and forth. Let's see, was there anybody else? Oh, another probably indication that the Attitude Era is back, Stephanie. The what chant is really back and forth, and I kind of really hate it. I just
Oh God, yeah.
Oh God, wait, yeah, because
That feels post Attitude Era. That's like
Yeah.
and I regret Steve Austin doing this, Wade. I wish you would have a conversation
it
with him.
pretty much undoes every accomplishment he ever
Well,
had.
And to me specifically, I don't know how you guys observe it, but people do it when it's a non-American speaking and women, and that always makes me really, really mad because I was actually really enjoying the Gunther and Randy back and forth. I knew but the thing that hurt that segment, once it got kind of like American versus anti-American, I was like, oh no, see, you don't do that because you're kind of leading them in a direction and they're gonna do that. So, but other than my kind of like critiques of stuff, everybody was just having a great time. I mean, it was wild. So when we passed the stadium, I think it was about 5 or 5:30, hundreds out in the Texas sun waiting to get in, which I'm just like, because it's 100. We're in August, so it's about 100 degrees every day out here. So they really, really want those Yeats or whatever, or that new Roman shirt, because the tickets were sold out. I don't know if they were looking for scalpers at all. So that to me just shows that everybody is wanting to be there regardless what's on there. I will say, being at a Raw, you still felt that lull where I was like, it's 8:30 and the show's not over yet? I don't, because I don't honestly get that because when you go to an AEW show, you'll do like a Dynamite and you'll get kind of like a intermission with Rampage. So, you don't feel as exhausted, but I looked up and it was 8:30. And I was like, how is this show not over yet? It doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, I was gonna. One of the things I was gonna ask you, Brian, because I know AEW is more your beat and your preference, is just how, like, what specifically stood out as different in terms of the makeup of the crowd, what they reacted to, and from another perspective, what could each company, I don't want to say learn from the other, but is there? What do you think the takeaway if Tony Khan would be going to a WWE show or Paul Levesque going to an AEW show where they'd be like, oh, this is something to aspire to, or this is something I'm jealous of, or this is something that we could emulate. So whatever, just, and broadly speaking, talk about anything comparing those two.
It's funny you say that way because I actually got a couple things off the top. If I'm Tony Khan, I'm stealing how they're setting up these TV shows. The smaller stage and the smaller kind of entranceway, that is the way you do it because you fit more people in there first and foremost, and that's
not an AEW problem. Needing more, they got a lot of empty seats before they got other things to do before that's a problem.
For sure,
Sorry.
for sure. But no. But you know what I'm saying though, because like that, you don't have that obnoxious big Raw stage because it kind of feels like a vibe where you're kind of like a little bit more intimate, like you're on the watching a hockey game, banging on the glass if somebody's about to score. I loved how that was set up. Their lighting, you can actually see the people. Like I want to see the faces. I want to see the people cheer. If I'm Tony Khan, that's something I would take away. I mean,
another thing where you need more fans to light it up. I mean,
another, like, I don't know if this is something that is you could cross this over with the AEW base, but like Samantha Irving getting everybody involved in the intermissions, kind of like if you're at a Major League Baseball game, everybody loved that. Like just like the silly Money in the Bank, where can you find where the title is? Doing the DX chants, like there's, hey, who's got the best Undertaker face? They are really going out of their way to get everybody involved. So that's one thing I would say. If I'm, Paul Levesque and I'm watching, Dynamite this Wednesday, there's I would feel like based on the amount of experience there, fundamentally, I want to see a little bit more crisp in the ring. I don't need to see a Will Ospreay match every time, but I still see these people that have been around kind of like the WWE system for a while, and they're just very functionally clunky to me. They're not very believable in the ring. Like, I'm trying to understand why The Miz is going 10 minutes with Bronson Reed. I don't really understand that. Like, I mean, I do and I don't. It's just like, why are we doing that? It was interesting to see the women's tag match. I felt like they were, I don't know if there was a timing issue with that at all, but I felt like they were really rushed. And I felt like if they would have not had to been rushed, they would have been a little bit more cleaner in the ring. I felt like there was just a lot of, I don't know, it didn't seem smooth at all to me. And then maybe they just were like, well, this is going to end in a DQ. Why are we going to really bust our ass anyway, kind of thing? Because it's like, and then, be a little bit more disciplined and thoughtful on your finishes. Because like for the Texas Tornado match, I don't know if you guys touch on this now, but what a Texas Tornado match, the winners win by roll up. Like that's kind of lame. Like be a little bit more bolder with your finishes there, Paul Levesque.
Yeah, Paul Levesque's finishes aren't a strength, Stephanie, these days.
No,
he's a plotter, that Paul Levesque. Let me tell you, he loves to plot.
It's interesting, like the things that Paul could learn from Tony, are a lot of just in ring stuff, like making the in ring crisper, improving finishes. When you really look at what WWE is doing right now, and it feels so hot right now and so popular, and it's bringing in like a lot of families. Like I've been to 2 pay-per-views this summer, Money in the Bank and SummerSlam, and like the level of kids there is you would never see that in an AEW show. And they're really invested. So I think that whatever kind of the in-ring like wrestling stuff that WWE needs to improve on, their audience like don't mind at all. They are so into it. And I just, maybe I'll be proven like completely wrong, but like the way this feels like it's bubbling up, I think we are heading towards a really big boom, that like the Netflix era is going to be so huge, and Tony Khan is here like working on a TV deal for months and months, and I hope he's like tried to comprehend how WWE on Netflix is going to be, because I'm not sure that like any of us are ready for it, especially if they start presenting a product that is more appealing to young people and teenagers, especially in people in their 20s. Because God, imagine if wrestling suddenly becomes cool, like WWE wrestling. like what are we all gonna do? It's gonna be wild. But yeah, it's just interesting thinking of the things that they could each learn from each other.
Yeah, I actually had like one. I don't know if this is a question here now, but I'm gonna go ahead and ask it. Like right now, based on you're a numbers guy, you look at projections kind of down the road. I was looking at like where we were sitting based on like what the price point is. Like as WWE continues to get hotter, Stephanie just brought up the Netflix deal. Do you think there might be kind of like a regression of the curve a little bit as the WWE is getting more popular? The ticket prices are going to get increasingly higher, and then maybe like you're going to have those people that want to be a part of the party, but then you're going to maybe lose out on those families that are bringing in their small children. Because like tonight, I believe the cheapest ticket that we saw was like $70, and that was like obviously way up there. But like, do you think there's anything to that? Because if they're popular, they're this popular right now. I mean, if they're gonna charge, let's say $400 for a good Raw seat, people are gonna buy it. But then you lose out on that opportunity to where kids right before back to school can enjoy wrestling.
So they're going to charge what they can get away with charging. I mean, and as soon as they can't get away with, if they're not selling 11, 12,000 tickets and they start seeing return visits and it's going down, they have their way to figure out. They're going to look at what tickets are selling, which ones aren't, how many of them they can price at a premium level. There'll be a cutoff point quicker for when there's a big drop. So they'll still have really high priced tickets. I mean, there's just the way that everything works now. They have all the formulas figured out. It's so much more sophisticated, but basically they're going to figure out, they have full-time people studying this. Their jobs depend on it, maximizing revenue. They will charge whatever they can get away with. And the premium ticket prices will probably stay very, very high. But if they start to see a drop off in attendance and people buying the cheap seats quicker than they are now, they'll lower the price of some of the ones in the middle, to kind of get those people in. So they're going to adjust. I mean, they are not worried about pricing out people who have less money. Mm-hmm. They're worried about the people with the most money spending the most money on their tickets to give them the most revenue they can. That's just the way it is. Now, can there be a negative? Yeah. I mean, like sports being only on cable years ago and not on broadcast television anymore, people thought, well, that's going to hurt, kids getting into baseball if they can't see games, if they can't afford cable. And that's one of the things WWE touted with SmackDown going on Fox, was we're going to reach a whole new generation of people, including people who don't have cable and are watching on their antennas. I mean, I know people who are like that. They have a streaming service or two. They don't have cable and they have an antenna TV. So it's just going to adjust as they go. But I think through social media, the younger generation is it's the gateway drug into it. And then they're going to find a parent, or they're going to go on a secondary market and find a cheap ticket that they can get at the last second. And they're going to, kind of beat the system as best they can. But WWE's goal is absolutely maximize revenue. They're not going to lower prices, because if they do, there's no guarantee it's going to get in the hands of someone on a tight budget.
True. Okay. No, that was on top of my head. Oh no, did we lose Stephanie?
Yeah, she'll hopefully call back. Yeah, okay, she dropped off. Yeah. I didn't do it. Don't blame me.
Right.
Yeah, so let's see. Bring Stephanie back in. Hey, Stephanie.
Hey, sorry.
Yep, no problem. We know that stuff happens. Yeah, so go ahead, Brian.
No, but no, I appreciate that, because it was just interesting to see, like, because even if there is that price point where WWE is like gonna charge whatever, the Netflix thing benefits those people. It's like, we can't go to a show, but we've got it on Netflix. We can just watch it at home.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of sports that I'd rather watch on television than going to the arena these days. I mean, I still like hitting games now and then, but I mean, TVs are so good, sound system's so good, and I mean, obviously it's a lot better than it was a long time ago watching sports on TV.
For sure.
Yeah. Anyway, Brian, you mentioned in your email a couple pre-Raw matches. Spoiler alert for anybody. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pete Dunne and Joaquin Wilde. Pete ended up winning with a bitter end, and then Dragon Lee returned, but he lost to Ludwig Kaiser in a match tape for main event. Any thoughts on those? Anything stand out?
No, not really. I was kind of surprised that Dragon Lee lost. I wasn't really sure if he was injured. I'd heard some things, Wade, maybe why he was absent for a very long time. I've just been kind of curious to see. They were really pushing him at first, and then it just, it's kind of just unfortunately a guy now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I mean, coming back and losing a main event match isn't promising.
No, it's not, because Ludwig is just kind of like, he's a fine wrestler, but that's kind of like the Gunther pin eater of the group, which he can. Ludwig Kaiser could lose on main event. That's not gonna hurt him at all. I saw that and I was like, that's not probably promising for your upward trajectory, because weren't they kind of pitching him for like that U.S. title picture, and it just never really happened?
Stephanie, what have you thought of Dragon Lee's push? It's been, to me, noteworthy that it seems like every week or 2 or 3, it goes from we're pushing him to no, we're not pushing him. Then we're pushing him again.
Yeah, it seems very stop-start. And I know he was away for a little bit and people were wondering like where he was. He just hasn't seemed to like find that like his niche yet, or they haven't found like the right place for him. And I don't think his prospects are very good if they're gonna bring in like Penta and Phoenix as well. Like I'd be pretty worried if I was him, to be honest.
Which is unfortunate, because I feel like he's got actually a really good presentation. He's probably got one of the few very good theme songs in the company. I really like his song. different. He's got a good presentation. And, like you said, Stephanie, like, where does he fit on that pecking order? Because I kind of feel like, he's in this weird LWO spheres, like, where he's just kind of existing, where, it's Legado and then Andrade and all these people. And then, occasionally Rey Mysterio and then sometimes Dominic Mysterio. And there's not really any direction. You're just kind of like a faction, which if you're on TV, that's great. But then it's like, if you're forgettable though, and we don't see you, that's potentially a problem. Is there a solution maybe just to kind of bump it back to NXT? I don't know if that's backward. I think he's very talented, and I would like to see him on TV, but
yeah.
And that was a conversation I was having with a lot of people tonight. It's who would have thought, Wade, we're having this conversation now. If you look at the roster a few years ago, there's this logjam of people now. So, everybody's really excited about, these potential free agents coming over to WWE. But then I always ask them, okay, well, if wrestler XYZ is going to entertain the idea, he's either going to have to go to NXT, probably work 2 to 3 years, because if he doesn't already have that relationship built up with the Paul Levesque, he has to earn it. And even if he's a friend of a top guy, I don't even think that's enough. Yeah. Quite frankly. Yeah. So,
Dragon Lee doesn't jump out to me, honestly, as a guy where it's like, what, they're not pushing him harder, but I'm also wouldn't be surprised if they did. It's still hard to pinpoint what it is about Rey Mysterio that just made it. And besides his obviously just crazy athleticism, which stood out more for him when he was younger in that era than it does now for Dragon Lee. But I don't know. I mean, it's like there's a lot of masked wrestlers who do fancy moves. You've got to have an aura that extends beyond the mask and the outfit. Hologram in AEW is maybe going to be one of those people. We'll see. He's going to, he's moving from Collision, where you see him, Brian, to now being hyped in a little vignette on Dynamite and making his debut. So he comes across as somebody on the rise. Stephanie, what do you think about Dragon Lee and that kind of X factor that Ray has? How do you compare Hologram to Dragon Lee, for example?
Hologram seems more unique than we've been used to seeing. I think Ray was so exceptional. It's hard to compare anyone to him. And Dragon Lee is, I don't think he has enough distinctive about him to make the fans jump over to him as their next guy. I think Penta and Phoenix, if we say that they're coming in, and I think they'll probably go to the main roster, their look is unique enough that it feels totally different from anything we've seen with Dragon Lee or in the LWO or in Legado del Fantasma. I think WWE has been always looking to replace Rey Mysterio, but I think they sometimes go for something that's too much like Rey Mysterio when he's irreplaceable. And I think if fans, especially young fans who have never seen the Lucha Bros before, will see them as totally different, more like Psychosis or someone like that, where it just feels like more separate. So I think they have a better chance of being distinctive than Dragon Lee has, unfortunately. And I can't see him going back to NXT working out for him, because they have so much talent coming into NXT. I think he's just a victim of creative has nothing for you, and it's unfortunate.
Do you feel like maybe I don't know if Paul Levesque has told him kind of turn down his style a little bit, because you remember those matches he popped up on AEW, and he's doing all these crazy dives and everything, and then when WWE made it official, they made him feel like a big deal, and it's like, okay, did you get bored? It was kind of like new toy syndrome, right? Okay, you got you had the new toy, but then you got bored and put it down, and now you're trying to play it again. I would say if we're comparing, let's say Hologram to Dragon Lee, I feel like they're being realistic about Hologram, where they're taking their time with him. I feel like, because obviously this is a project of Tony's that he's really wanted for a very long time, And I don't think they're rushing anything because, obviously they're not going to throw hologram versus, Jack Perry tomorrow or anything like that, right? I really feel like they're trying to find, what actually works for hologram, because it was interesting kind of being at the Collision show where he wrestled the Beast Mortos. Kids were trying to gravitate towards him, and I think it was like an honest kind of like human moment where he didn't really know what to do, and he kind of gave the kid a high five, and the kid was so happy, and then you saw emotion through the mask, and maybe Wade, that's maybe what you're trying to like. Is that where you're kind of going with Dragon Lee? We're not really seeing any emotion, because like I see more emotion through hologram through Dragon Lee, which if that's the case, and that's not good. No, eventually hologram's going to have to get a microphone, and we'll see how that goes. But at least right now in the interim, AEW is putting hologram in the best position possible to succeed. And I thought they were doing that with Dragon Lee. They were putting him, he was the former NXT North American champion.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, to be continued. I mean, we'll see. It's just been so start and stop. I don't know what to say. Brian, is there anything else from your experience tonight you want to share before we move to our other callers here?
No, I just, again, I think just the vibe and atmosphere of just the WWE audience is just, it's off the chain right now. It's a huge party. I want to say right now, even though they may throw something on there, like I might not like, Wade, you might not like, Stephanie, you might not like, I don't think it really matters right now. I think they're kind of like this crazy thing that we always talked about kind of in the wrestling space, where we always thought WWE was idiot proof, and now they're only getting more popular, which is like scary to think about. Like, how could this like even get more popular where they could just throw something on? But to be fair, they are, it's not like they're throwing 24/7 segments out there. They are, trying different stuff and everything like that. So, but again, as long as the fans are happy, that's all that matters. And they're coming and buying products, waiting outside an hour and a half in 100-degree weather to get those shirts. But I'll let you guys go. But it was nice talking to you both.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to call in, and it's really cool knowing you're an AEW guy, getting to see a Raw for the first time in all these years and convey that perspective. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye.
Yep.
Bye.
All right, cool. All right, let's bring Heel Mark back in quickly for his comment on, I believe, a mid-card women's title. Let's see if your audio is working, Mark.
Yeah, how's it working?
Yep, sounds good. We got Jason in Australia on hold, and I want to get rolling here, so we'll do this quick with you.
I wanted to say one rebuttal comment off what Brian said.
Yeah.
If WWE, this is a fantasy thing, okay? Nobody please jump down my throat. If WWE wanted to take something from AEW, they would take Darby Allin. Plain and simple. That's all they got to do. Just take Darby Allin. Anyway,
maybe they get Danny
women's mid-card title. Hear me out on this.
Yep.
Nobody likes the women's tag team. They're always complaining about it. They're like, there's too many titles. There's too many titles. But hear me out. Like, there's so many women that are coming up now, and there's only 2 women's titles on the main roster. But there's 4 men's titles. You have the mid card and you have the main round. You have the big title. Mm-hmm. So if nobody pays attention to the tag title, and there really isn't that enough women to make a tag division, why not make a mid card title? And this is my way of, this is how I thought of doing it. Why not? You could either have the women's tag team split up, like have them get into a fight where it's so bad where you have to put one on Raw and one on SmackDown, and now you give them a new belt and say this is the women's Intercontinental, this is the women's US. Or you draft them and put like one on Raw and one on SmackDown and do the same thing. It gives the, and now you have the women that can't get that main, the big title. It gives them a mid-card title, because look at how many mid-card title guys are in the Hall of Fame. that would have never had an opportunity to get that big shot, like Ted DiBiase.
Yeah. All right, Mark.
Roddy
I got to jump in because
That's all
I'm
I'm saying.
trying to get to everybody here with it before it gets too late. But it definitely got it. I want to throw to Stephanie on that because obviously, Mark brings up a point other people have made, which is having a secondary women's single title. But there's people that don't think there should be two women's singles titles. AEW gets criticized for having two women's singles titles, and it's not clear which one is more prestigious. Another example would just be having one women's world champion and one secondary women's champion. So at least there's a reason for both to exist, but with split roster, split brands, that's more difficult to do. I mean, I know Mark he prefaced it by saying it's an unpopular opinion. I don't think we need more titles. I don't think there's enough women's segments on shows to support it. I think it's crazy NXT has two women's titles. Stephanie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we're always going to have two main women's titles with the roster split. And that's the way there is with the men. Like, the men do have the two secondary titles, but the roster is bigger. They get more TV time. With the women, I would just rather see them focus on making the tag division good. I don't think women's wrestling has traditionally had tag teams in the same way as men do, like where you've got like FTR or the Young Bucks that are like lifer tag teams. You don't really see that with women because the tag division has never truly been like looked after, and they would be just better off doing that because I don't think they're ever going to scrap a women's tag team title because there's a men's one. So yeah, people would just find that sexist if they took a tag team title off the women. It would be like, why aren't the women tag team wrestling? So rather than seeing another like a mid-card title introduced, even if it would be helpful to elevate, I kind of almost see how well the NXT Women's Championship is, I almost see that as like the women's mid-card title. Like I see Roxanne as the next woman on her way up, the way that I might see, a woman holding a mid-card belt on the main roster. But yeah, I don't think we're ever going to get rid of the women's tag team titles. So I think just focus on making them better.
All right, Mark, quick closing words from you.
Okay, the only thing I want to say in rebuttal to that one is if, taking the women's tag team titles away would be sexist, right? Because the men have it, then why don't the women have it? Well, then the men have mid-card titles. The women not having them would be sexist for them not to have.
All right. Thanks, Mark. I don't know. I think we've made our arguments. I don't think we need to have title for title match between men and women in pro wrestling. Okay, let's go to Jason from Australia. Up next, Jason, welcome. What's on your mind? For Jason, we're running long, and I know sometimes you bring up broad discussions that aren't Raw specific, and I'm trying to keep my nights a little shorter. So let's try to stick to Raw, and then if you have a more broad-based question, I want to have the energy to give it my full attention and time. So maybe email that into the flagship. I don't want to ruin your call if that's all you're going to talk about, but I am trying to shorten these up a little bit, and for my sake and for the co-host's sake too. But Jason, welcome. Other than that.
Thank you, Wade. Enjoy your comments, Stephanie. Wade, you don't have to butter me up or be nice to me. I get what you're saying, so I'll just keep it to Raw. All right? I'll pick up the hints. All right, we're not that.
We're not looking for topics to stretch past the 2-hour mark. I'm aiming for like 75 to 90 minutes, and we just can't get the show tight enough to do that. So I'm trying to be Minnesota nice, but also figure out a way to not burn myself out every night on these shows going longer than we did back on the Blog Talk days.
And I'm going to be Australia understanding, right? So I get where you're coming from. So
Cool.
I'll keep it to Raw. First of all, I just wanted to say I could listen to Gunther cut promos all day. I love his condescending nature. I mean, it's just the best.
Yes.
He gives you a compliment, but then he just takes it away from you.
Yep, totally.
Tremendous heel.
Yep.
Now, just quickly.
And Jason, sorry, it's not a cheap shot either. He speaks the truth. He just does so. Yeah. It stings, but you sort of resent him for it. But you also resent him for being kind of right.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the parent that says, look, you got 88%. That's great, but you really could have got a 90. I mean, don't get me wrong, 88's good, but could you have got a 90? So you've kind of wasted your potential there. That's how he comes across to me. He's such a great heel. Just quickly, I apologise if someone's brought this up. Obviously, I love seeing Bronson Reed doing well, representing Australia, and they're building him up as a monster heel. I kind of think Braun Breaker, is he kind of in a tweener stage? He got the entrance coming out where my dog's at. I kind of noted that right towards the end, Sami Zayn was giving him a look as if to say, yeah, you got me. Are they building a potential Bronson Reed versus Braun Breaker match where we're seeing the tsunamis? He's taking everyone out. This would set Braun Breaker up to take a tsunami, but then to pop up and deliver that awesome Hurricane Runner. I mean, I can see the whole match layout.
So, Stephanie, do you want Braun Breaker to be a heel or a face? Where do you think you're going? I'm intrigued with why they're giving Bronson Reed this huge push. It's interesting that Miz was more open to facing Braun Breaker than Bronson Reed when R-Truth got them confused. But it's interesting what Jason brings up. What do you think?
Yeah, I had not thought about Bronson and Braun Breaker before. Maybe I should have, but that is extremely intriguing. But then it kind of makes me feel like maybe the Bronson push isn't as long term as I would have thought. So I don't know about that one. Braun, I think, is turning face, is a face now, and I thought that as soon as he did his post SummerSlam win interview when he was on that panel that they did at the same time as the press conference, and he was just being very nice and very out of character. So I think because he's been so impressive in the main roster and they kind of can't stop people being behind him even when he's against Sami Zayn, that I think they're just going face turn. But I did pick up on the Miz thing being less scared of Braun Breaker than Bronson Reed, and I thought that was pretty odd. But what they're doing with Bronson Reed, I think, has been really cool, and I really do want to see some big things for him. I think he's someone that they have underutilized for too long. So yeah, a match between him and Braun Breaker would be really cool, as long as they then don't stop the Bronson Reed push afterwards, as long as he continues moving on.
Yeah, but that's interesting. Yeah, so I was just going to say, Stephanie, that's interesting you say that. But then, I mean, I'm a fan of Bronson Reed, but then where do you go with him? This is the issue, right? You build him up. Do we see him defeating Gunther? No, he's not going to. He's not going to be a world champion, right? And if he doesn't defeat Gunther, where do you go? Maybe someone like him's the type of person that all you can really do is heat him up for someone like a Braun Breaker to get that impressive victory, and then he sort of moves back down the card. As you say, Wade, everyone's sort of got their place. And although I am a fan of Bronson Reed, maybe his place is just to be a monster for a Braun Breaker to slay to further build up Braun Breaker.
And there's nothing wrong with giving somebody a monster heel push to set them up to fall. I mean, that was the Hulk Hogan, Hulkamania, WWF, and really prior to that, AWA formula, is just present a monster heel opponent, a different type of opponent. But, Earthquake went through a phase where he was pushed as the most dangerous thing ever. Years before that, King Kong Bundy was. I went to a house show. Jason Paul and I, before we went, were like, I think this is going to be where a title changes hands on a house show. Hercules is going to beat Hulk Hogan. We always try to talk ourselves into, as teenagers, that we're going to see a title change in person, even if it was a non-televised house show and Hercules, of all people, was Hogan's opponent. It wasn't going to happen, but we like to talk ourselves into it just for fun. And so, but that was done. I mean, Vince, that was, and it's not just Vince McMahon that did it. Any territory that had a top babyface champion, and Vince Sr. did it before Vince Jr., it built up a heel opponent. And I am of the belief philosophically that every time you push someone, it doesn't mean you're committed to them for 4 to 12 years as a main eventer. Sometimes you give someone a push like Bronson Reed, who's ticked off that he wasn't getting the respect he deserves. He's injured Seth. He's gone after the as Cole called him, a national treasure, R-Truth. Dispatched Miz. Maybe it took too long. And Cole's like, oh, Miz is really taking it to Reed. I don't think if you're trying to get Reed over, you shouldn't use those words or have a match where those words seem to fit. But my point is I'm fine if they just build him up just to feed him to Braun Breaker, if that is the plan. Jason, back to you.
Well, I got to go now myself. So I have 48 other things I could bring up, but I'll take your hit there, Wade. But yeah, I'm just saying, right? Look, the way that I'm just seeing it play out, I can just see they're building up the tsunami. I can just see him going for a third tsunami, and then Braun just nipping up and hitting that beautiful Hurricane Runner. I mean, I can just see it all play out, and I got no issue with that. So, certain wrestlers have got certain spots on the card, and they're built for certain things. But overall, another good show, and I'll let you get back to it. All right, nice speaking to you, Stephanie. Wade, always good. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Jason. If you got more to say, email the flagship. Jason Paul and I will take your question tomorrow when we record the flagship too. And I throw that out to our emailers and video callers and chat room. If you have, I'm trying to tighten up the show a little bit, not to be too inside baseball here and not go 2 hours plus every time. And one of the ways to do that is if you have a general question that's not in particular about the show we just watched, doesn't pick on Mark, our previous caller, but like a mid-card wins title. That's a flagship topic. That is not what happened tonight on Raw. Let's get to it. Certainly not a long discussion. I want to make sure I did this early on with Blog Talk too, where the post shows are just talk about stuff on the TV show and let's save the other stuff for mailbag and flagship editions. Jason, I'm not scolding you. This is just a case of the show can get unwieldy long if I don't kind of try to rein all of us in a little bit and stay to the particulars. And I think
and Wait, in fairness, it's getting to 1 o'clock in the afternoon over here, so I have 3 minutes to go, and I've got a breakdancing class I've got to get to. So you know how it's.
I hope that's true.
So, yeah,
I hope that's true. Is that true, Jason?
Hey man, you know what? Kayfabe.
I'm gonna go with that's the truth. All right, thanks, Jason.
They call me J Gun. All right, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Stephanie, any thoughts on what I said about Bronson Reed?
Well, I think if he keeps attacking people like Seth Rollins, The Miz, and R-Truth, we're in danger of him becoming the biggest babyface on the roster. Like he's really taking out the most annoying guys. But no, I do agree with you. Like you don't have to be committed to everyone long term, and I think that WWE is missing that kind of mid-card monster, and Bronson Reed's a good guy that could fit that.
Yeah, I'm talking about the flagship. Here's the logo. It's not on YouTube, so if you made it this far into this post show and you like our brand of covering wrestling, subscribe on your podcast app or stream it from PWTorch.com. Search Wade Keller in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever podcast app you use on Android or iOS, or find it on our main website, PWTorch.com. That'll drop tomorrow night. Again, that is not a YouTube show. The Blue Logo show is podcast audio only. So check that out. And you can also subscribe on Patreon. There's a 7-day free trial, and that gives you ad-free versions of our free shows, like our post shows here on the podcast, the Wade Keller podcast, but also our whole VIP lineup is available. If you're on Patreon, if that's the platform that you like, or if you want to use Spotify, that's the way to get our ad-free and all the VIP exclusive shows in a Spotify format. You can get details on the whole array of VIP features and all the different ways to sign up, which also includes a way to sign up directly on your iPhone through your Apple Podcast app, and use your Apple account to subscribe. And I believe that has a 3-day free trial too. So full details at pwtorch.com/govip. We'd love your support. Stephanie, I'll throw to you anything else on Raw on your mind, in your notes that we didn't cover. That's a major enough segment. It would be a shame not to have a segment on it.
I mean, we didn't say anything about Drew and CM Punk.
Yeah.
So Drew is mad that Randy's getting the title shot, and he came out, and then CM Punk attacked him. And then was it later on? Yes, later on we saw CM Punk being interviewed, and he had pretended that he had travel issues, but he hadn't.
Because Drew wouldn't show up or would run away if he thought Punk was there.
Yeah. And then didn't he end it by saying that he has an idea of how to sort this?
I see he had the belt in his hand, so I think he's going to have like a country whipping match or something, a strap match. That's what I took from it, because he looked at Drew's belt and was like, I got an idea.
That's interesting, because I really feel like they're gonna do Hell in a Cell at Bad Blood, right? But that's quite far away. That's October the 2nd or something like that. And they've got Bash in Berlin, and if I'm not mistaken, a Saudi show.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think they can just not do anything till Bad Blood. Like I don't think we can go through another couple of months of them not actually having a match. So yeah, maybe something in between that, and I guess some sort of gimmick match. So but belt strap match it is, maybe. I don't know, but I'm intrigued at least.
Yeah, actually, there's Bash in Berlin August 31st, nothing in September, and then Halloween Havoc. That's NXT. Then Crown Jewel is November 2nd, and then
okay, so
Bad Blood is the next one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just because Bash in Berlin and SummerSlam are both in August. It just missed the September 1st by one day. So yeah, we're gonna have a big gap between Bash in Berlin and Bad. Well, not a big gap, but an extra week.
Yeah. And I do feel that he being terminally online as CM Punk, I think secretly is. He's definitely heard people say that the bracelet was like a bad
I'm glad you brought that up.
McGuffin type thing. He has heard people made that criticism, so he wanted to come out there and be like, it's not that it's a bracelet, okay? It's not just that it's bracelet. And he really made like a firm point of that to the like where I was laughing, just being like, okay, Phil. I know it's not just that you didn't want to lose your bracelet, like, but you know, I'm glad that they're keeping the Punk and Drew thing going, because as much as I enjoyed SummerSlam, that match with Seth as a referee was not what I was hoping to get out of the first time these two like actually have a match during their feud. So it was good to see that maybe we'll get something, maybe with the violence that we were hoping for at SummerSlam, if they bring in a strap match, and hopefully Seth is still injured. I mean that in a bad way, but I don't want to see him refereeing or being anywhere near that match again.
Yeah. And the thing is, if going back to Bronson Reed, I mean, obviously Seth's going to get revenge against Bronson Reed, but does he lose? Do they send him after Braun Breaker first? Do they before Seth then, you know, gets him in a grudge match or whatever? I mean, they're in the Bronson Reed discussion. Obviously, I don't think R-Truth is going to have a PLE revenge match against him. R-Truth might try to go after him and then get crushed again, but it's you know, there's a Seth match in the future, but the way they're pushing him, and if they want to go babyface or tweener with Braun Breaker, then I think there's a match there to be had. I'm really glad you brought up the bracelet thing with Punk. I was kind of smiling like, okay, something got to him. He heard, and it's not the bracelet, it's what it stands for. And then so Drew continues to be great, even though he had less of a role tonight. Just his interaction with Adam Pearce. You know, you're like, yeah, you should be complaining. Randy Orton is getting a title shot and you got screwed out of yours by Punk, and he's coming from another brand. And you know, I mean, Drew does it in a way ultimately that I think is heelish and turns the casual fan against him, but he makes a pretty good case some of the time. Yeah,
and it's something that they've just gotten better at with WWE, as the storytelling's gotten better recently, like having these storylines that can like intermix. You know, we have the Gunther Randy Orton match set. Drew McIntyre is not going to walk out and insert himself into it, but he can still make a point about it and appear during their face-off that leads to the CM Punk thing happening, and it makes the show feel like it's more like just less staged, where people can mix it up. Like, why wouldn't Drew come out and say, why has this guy got a title shot? Like, I like stuff like that as well.
And I like that there's an answer to be given, you know, I mean, like, and I like that Randy addressed, if I win the title, I'm going to be on Raw, you know. So they had a good enough reason for Orton to cross brands and get a title shot, and then an explanation if he wins, what's going to happen. And then it makes sense Drew would be offended that a guy not from this brand is getting a title shot when obviously he's been screwed out of his more recent title shot. So I like that attention to detail. There was something else that I thought was an attention to detail on tonight's show. I made a mental note, but didn't write it down, that I want to bring up. There's something, I don't know if it was on commentary or whatever, but I crave a sense that the people writing the show, producing the show, and the wrestlers themselves are putting as much thought into it as we are, as we analyze it afterwards. You know, you don't want big gaps in logic, and you just want an explanation for things. So
I think for too long we've all kind of felt like talked down to, or that we're being told that we're like stupid and we don't need things to make sense, and we actually do. It's much better when they are logical, they make sense. It seems like an actual written television show. And I think that's why it's so much more fun now and interesting to talk about things like is there something going on between Liv and Balor? Because like, if it turns out there is, they've actually planted those seeds. Or if we see something like Odyssey's actually aligned with Carrion, like it would be an interesting twist that I think we're more confident now that they could actually pull these things off than in years gone by when these Raws really felt like 6 hours more than 3. Yeah.
All right, I'll wrap up with a couple chats that I marked just for housekeeping here. Rude Dog said Pat McAfee's diarrhea Pat McAfee's diarrhea reference, say that fast, was don't say it fast, after Maxine Dupree got slammed on the announce table. So we were asking about that earlier. Lady B says, Wade, I grew up listening to you. Thanks. Thanks to my brother. I like you too. Because you did the super chat just for you and wanted your opinion on things. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knows she likes me too. And Lady B also added, she's smoking hot and smart. You got to say both, Randy. That's, Randy's talking about his wife's looks, but say something besides I'm into her because of her looks, unless you want to, travel back to the 1970s and 60s and 50s and all that stuff. I don't know if there was anything else I needed to necessarily add in here. So Stephanie, just tell people how they can find more from you if they're looking for more of your commentary again.
Go find me on YouTube, Stephanie Chase Wrestling. You can watch some of my interviews, including the one I did with Michael Good today. I woke up I did that interview at 8 a.m. this morning. Weird, isn't that crazy? Like I
haven't seen 8 a.m. in a long time.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, check that out. And find me on Substack too at Stephanie Chase.
Excellent. Stephanie, thanks so much. It was a blast talking WWE here with you. And by the way, check out if I know the event already happened, but you can watch Stephanie and me talk about SummerSlam on her channel. On Fightful, I should say. I did a SummerSlam preview show with you, and I appreciate you having me as a guest on your show.
Yeah, it was so much fun, and it's great talking to all about you. Usually people think I only want to talk about AEW, but that's not true.
Yeah. No, you did a great job tonight, so it's not like you were dragged kicking and screaming and having to fake your way through it. You got a lot of good thoughts on WWE, of course. Cool. Thanks to all our listeners on the podcast side, our viewers on the YouTube side. Thanks to our video callers. Thanks and audio callers in case of Jason. Thanks to our emailers, Wade Keller podcast @gmail.com. We very much invite your email questions for the flagship that Jason Paul and I will be recording on Tuesday afternoon. So that is your way to have your voice heard, suggest a topic, or just rant or have a strong opinion about something. Thanks, everybody, and we will talk to you all next time.